The hum of the Starhawk's engines vibrated through the ship, a constant reminder of the mission ahead. Captain Sarah Wilder stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, her gaze fixed on the vast expanse of space ahead. Through the reinforced glass, the Elysian hub loomed large in the distance, a massive structure that had served as the hub for interstellar diplomacy for centuries. The human fleet had made its way across the galaxy to attend this pivotal summit, but Sarah knew that nothing about this meeting was going to be simple. "Status report, Commander?" Sarah's voice was calm, but the tension in her posture betrayed her. Commander Alia Grayson, standing at the helm, turned to face her. "Approaching the station, Captain. We'll dock in 15 minutes. All systems are green, and the crew is ready for the summit." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through the upcoming negotiations. The summit was supposed to be a celebration of the galaxy's unity, a chance to strengthen alliances and finalize a new trade treaty that would benefit all. But Sarah had learned in her years as a commander that diplomacy was a delicate dance, and every word, every gesture carried weight. The stakes were higher this time. Humanity's place among the stars was still new and fragile, and there were those who wished to see that falter. "Any word from High Command?" Sarah asked. Alia hesitated before responding. "They've sent their confidence, but there's an undercurrent of concern. The Zarathians are playing their cards close to the chest. There's talk of High Chancellor Drakkar being more aggressive than usual." Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line at the mention of Drakkar. The Zarathian Collective had long been one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. They had watched humanity's rapid rise with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Drakkar, their ambitious leader, had never been one to tolerate any threat to his power. Humanity's newfound prominence was exactly that, a threat. "I've met Drakkar before," Sarah said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. "I don't trust him." Alia raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, the Starhawk docked with the station, a soft thud reverberating through the ship. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing their positions, preparing to disembark. Sarah's mind, however, was elsewhere. The Elysian hub was a marvel of galactic architecture, a blend of ancient, towering spires and sleek, modern technology. As Sarah and her crew disembarked, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the eyes upon them. Representatives from all corners of the galaxy were already gathering, their species' colors and markings standing out against the polished floors. Some gave nods of recognition, others of indifference. Humanity had been a newcomer on the galactic stage, and though they had proven themselves time and again, there were still those who saw them as little more than a fledgling power. "We're in the lion's den now," Sarah muttered under her breath. Alia gave a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "And the lion's teeth are sharper than we thought." The two women moved with purpose, flanked by their officers, as they made their way to the grand hall where the summit would take place. The room was already filled with the soft murmur of voices as delegates from dozens of species exchanged pleasantries, vying for position in this game of galactic politics. At the far end, High Chancellor Drakkar stood, his tall, imposing figure surrounded by members of his retinue. His silver-blue skin shimmered in the light, and his eyes gleamed with calculated confidence. He wasn't here by chance, he had a purpose, and it had nothing to do with peace. As Sarah approached, Drakkar's gaze locked onto hers, a slight smirk tugging at his lips. She didn't flinch, though her hand tightened around the folder she held. Drakkar was a master manipulator, and he'd already proven himself a dangerous adversary in the past. But humanity was no longer the underdog it once had been. Sarah had no intention of backing down. She extended her hand, and Drakkar took it with a cold, practiced smile. "Captain Wilder," he said smoothly, his voice a low, resonant drawl. "I trust the journey was uneventful?" "For the most part," Sarah replied, her tone neutral, though the tension was thick between them. "I'm glad to see the Zarathians haven't lost their flair for theatrical entrances." Drakkar chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Theatrics are what make diplomacy exciting, Captain. But I assure you, there is no drama here today. Merely the future of the galaxy." His words were smooth, but Sarah knew better. Drakkar had never been one for genuine diplomacy. He wasn't interested in unity, he was interested in control. And humanity was an obstacle in his path. As the delegates settled into their seats, the meeting began in earnest. The Elysian Hub's central chamber was a circular room, the walls adorned with holographic maps of star systems and trade routes. The Council of Elders, the governing body overseeing the summit, took their seats at the center, their presence imposing even though they were largely silent in their observation. Their ancient eyes flicked between the various representatives, each one calculating and weighing the situation. Sarah sat among her fellow human diplomats, her focus unwavering as the negotiations started. She listened to the speeches, the discussions on trade, security, and resource allocation. Everything was proceeding as planned, until Drakkar spoke. "The rise of humanity," he said, his voice cutting through the air, "has been nothing short of impressive. But it has also been alarming. Your rapid technological advancement, your relentless expansion, these are not the hallmarks of a species that understands the weight of its actions. I warn you, Captain Wilder, that the galaxy cannot afford another destabilizing force." The room went silent. Sarah's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. She knew what Drakkar was doing. He was planting the seeds of doubt, trying to isolate humanity, and make them seem like a threat. A threat that needed to be handled. She stood, her voice calm but firm. "I would remind you, Chancellor, that humanity has always acted in defense of peace. We've never sought to dominate, only to survive. Perhaps it's time you reconsidered your views on us." The tension in the room was palpable, but Drakkar's smirk never faltered. "We shall see, Captain. We shall see." As the summit continued, Sarah's mind raced. Drakkar wasn't just playing politics, he was setting the stage for something bigger. The warning from High Command echoed in her ears. "Drakkar is testing you, Captain. Don't let him provoke you." But it was too late for that. Drakkar had already done exactly what the elders had warned against. He had provoked humanity. And now Sarah knew there would be no turning back. The meeting drew to a close, but Sarah's mind was already on what came next. She knew that Drakkar wouldn't stop here. She had to be ready. Humanity had to be ready. Whatever Drakkar's gain was, Sarah would make sure humanity's response was one he wouldn't soon forget. As she left the summit, her thoughts turned to the Starhawk, waiting at the dock. It was time to show the galaxy exactly what humanity was capable of. The Starhawk drifted silently in the vastness of space, its sleek hull reflecting the cold glow of distant stars. Inside, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound breaking the stillness. Sarah Wilder stood at the bridge's command console, staring out into the void. She had a clear view of the Elysian Hub, still visible in the distance, but her thoughts were far away. The summit had ended with a tense silence. High Chancellor Drakkar had delivered his final remarks, leaving humanity's representatives to stew in the implications of his words. Sarah hadn't expected a diplomatic victory, but Drakkar's underhanded tactics had gone beyond simple rhetoric. His provocations were calculated, designed to sow discord and mistrust among the galactic factions. It was a warning shot, one that humanity had narrowly avoided. But Sarah wasn't fooled. Drakkar's ambitions were much darker than simple political maneuvering. Something was coming, and humanity was at the center of it. "Captain?" Sarah snapped out of her thoughts and turned to Commander Alia Grayson, who stood at her side. Alia's expression was grim, her eyes scanning the data on her screen. "We've received an encrypted transmission. From High Command. It's urgent." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Put it through." The transmission flickered to life, and the face of Admiral Kessler, her superior, appeared on the screen. His stern gaze and military demeanor were all business. "Captain." Kessler's voice was low and urgent. "We've intercepted Zarathian communications. Drakkar's provocations were just the beginning. He's consolidating support within the Zarathian collective and actively seeking to undermine humanity's position in the galaxy. We've confirmed that there are planned sabotage operations targeting human trade routes. The Outer Rim, specifically the Trillion Corridor, is the primary focus. Sarah's pulse quickened. The Trillion Corridor was a key artery for human trade, vital to maintaining supply lines between Earth and its far-flung colonies. If Drakkar succeeded in cutting off this route, it would cripple humanity's economy and destabilize their colonies. How many ships are we talking about? Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the rising tension. At least 24, Kessler replied. And they're not acting alone. Drakkar has managed to gain the support of the Krivak Dominion, a faction known for its militant approach to diplomacy. The Trillion Corridor is a critical point for both sides. Drakkar knows if he can control it, he can strangle humanity's influence in the sector. Understood. Sarah's mind was already calculating their next move. What's the plan? We're sending a task force to intercept the Zarathian fleet. But we need you to secure human interests in the Outer Rim. You're our most capable ship. I need the Starhawk to move out immediately and begin operations. Get in front of Drakkar's fleet and neutralize the threat before they make their move. Understood, Admiral. We'll be ready to leave within the hour. The transmission cut out, leaving Sarah with a sense of urgency settling in her chest. Drakkar wasn't just playing a political game, he was trying to create a war. A war that humanity would be blamed for. Sarah wasn't about to let that happen. Hours later, the Starhawk cut through the darkness of space, the ship's engines glowing a deep blue as it accelerated toward the Trillion Corridor. Sarah stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the sector. Alia stood by her side, her hands flying over the console as she monitored ship statuses and intercepted communications. It's quiet, Alia observed, eyes narrowing at the data stream. Too quiet. I don't like it either, Sarah replied, her voice tight. Drakkar's fleet should be here by now. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by an alert from the ship's sensors. Captain! Lieutenant Derek Matthews called from his station, his voice sharp. We've got multiple ships, Zarathian warships, incoming. It's a full fleet moving fast. Sarah's stomach tightened. This was it. Drakkar had decided to make his move. Red alert, she ordered. Prepare for engagement. All hands to battle stations. The crews sprang into action, their movements fluid and coordinated. Sarah's mind was already calculating the best course of action. They needed to engage quickly, but they couldn't risk a direct confrontation without backup. The Starhawk was a formidable warship, but Drakkar's fleet was larger, more experienced. If it came to an all-out battle, humanity would risk losing everything. Commander Grayson, Sarah called, set a course for the Zarathian flagship. We'll strike at their heart and disable their command structure. We can't let Drakkar coordinate this attack. Alia nodded. On it, Captain. The Starhawk surged forward, cutting through space like a blade. The Zarathian fleet came into view, a dozen warships, their dark silhouettes against the stars, their engines glowing ominously. At their center was the Phoenix, Drakkar's flagship, massive and imposing. Sarah could already imagine Drakkar, standing at the heart of it all, overseeing the destruction. We have them in range, Alia reported, her voice calm despite the growing tension. Ready to fire. Hold fire for now, Sarah ordered. We need them to make the first move. The seconds stretched into eternity as the two fleets closed in. Then, without warning, the Zarathian fleet opened fire, bright bolts of energy tearing through the void. The Starhawk shuddered under the assault, but its shields held strong. The battle had begun. Engage evasive maneuvers, Sarah barked. Return fire, all weapons! The Starhawk twisted and turned, dodging incoming blasts as it fired back, its cannons unleashing powerful beams of energy that ripped through the Zarathian ships. The enemy fleet retaliated, their weapons cutting through the darkness with deadly accuracy. The sound of the battle reverberated through the hull of the Starhawk, but Sarah's focus remained sharp. She knew that they couldn't hold out forever. They had to neutralize Drakkar's command ship, or the battle would be lost before it even truly began. Lieutenant Matthews, target their shields, Sarah commanded. Commander, we need to get past their defenses. I'm on it, Alia responded, her hands moving deftly over the console. Firing now. The Starhawk's guns roared again, this time focused on the Phoenix. The enemy flagship shields flickered under the barrage, but they held steady. Drakkar was no fool. He knew that taking out the Starhawk would be the key to breaking humanity's will. "Captain, we've got a problem," Matthews warned. "The Krivak Dominion fleet has entered the sector. We're surrounded." Sarah's mind raced. They were trapped. Drakkar had outmaneuvered them, cutting off any escape route. "Prepare for a full assault," she said, her voice cold. "We will break through, no matter what." As the Starhawk fought against overwhelming odds, Sarah's resolve hardened. Drakkar had made his move, but humanity would not go down without a fight. This battle wasn't just about military superiority, it was about survival. And Sarah was determined to make sure humanity's place in the galaxy was secured, no matter the cost. "Let's show them what humans can do," she muttered under her breath. "Engage everything." The war had begun. The Starhawk rocked violently as the next wave of Zarathian fire slammed into its shields. The ship groaned, its hull vibrating from the impact, but the energy shields held strong, shimmering with golden light. The crew was ready. They had no choice but to be. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy, an all-out battle against the Zarathian collective, with Drakkar's flagship, the Phoenix, leading the charge. Sarah Wilder gripped the edge of the command console, her eyes fixed on the holoscreen ahead. The Zarathian fleet was vast, their warships closing in from all angles. The Krivak Dominion had arrived, their massive ships creating a chokehold around the Starhawk. If they couldn't break free, humanity's future would be decided here, in the cold vacuum of space. "Captain, their firepower is overwhelming," Lieutenant Matthews said, his voice tight with tension. "We can't keep this up for long." Sarah's mind raced as she watched the battle unfold. The Phoenix, Drakkar's flagship, was at the center, surrounded by smaller Zarathian warships, with Krivak Dominion vessels providing additional fire support. Drakkar's fleet was more coordinated than anything she had ever encountered. This wasn't just a battle, it was a test, a trial to see how far humanity would bend before breaking. "We're not breaking," Sarah muttered under her breath. She turned to Commander Alia Grayson, who was seated at the weapons station, her fingers flying over the controls. "Commander," Sarah said, her voice steady but urgent, "we need to take out their shields. Without that, we can't break through to their flagship." Alia's eyes flickered with determination. "I'm working on it, Captain. Give me another minute." "Make it fast," Sarah said, a brief glance at the sensor board confirming the worsening situation. Drakkar's ships were tightening the noose around the Starhawk, and if they didn't act soon, the Krivak Dominion would block their escape routes entirely. "Shields are holding," Alia reported, her voice steady despite the growing chaos. "But we're losing momentum. The Phoenix is still holding back, staying out of direct fire range. It's like they're waiting for us to make a mistake." Drakkar was no fool. Sarah had known this from the moment they first met. He was waiting for a misstep, for humanity to exhaust its resources. He'd underestimated them once before, but now that mistake was on the verge of costing him everything. "Captain," Alia added, "there's a gap in their defenses, just beyond the Krivak Dominion ships. If we can break through there, we can make it to the Phoenix." It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. "Do it," Sarah commanded. Alia's hands moved like lightning, inputting a series of commands into the ship's navigation system. The Starhawk responded, surging forward with a burst of speed that sent shockwaves through the crew. The battle was now a race against time and a relentless enemy. The Zarathian fleet responded with fury. Energy blasts filled the space around them, each one a near miss as Sarah pushed the Starhawk to its limits. The ship's hull shuddered again as a blast struck its side, but they were gaining ground. "Closing in on the gap," Alia called, her eyes fixed on the navigation system. "We're almost there, Captain. Hold on." The Starhawk tore through the Zarathian defenses, weaving between ships, narrowly avoiding incoming fire. The maneuver was risky, but Sarah knew there was no other option. As they neared the gap, a massive Krivak Dominion ship moved to block their path. "Now!" Sarah shouted. "Full thrusters, move!" With a surge of energy, the Starhawk shot forward, ramming into the Krivak Dominion vessel. The impact sent a violent jolt through the crew, but the ship's superior maneuverability allowed them to slip past the damaged ship before it could retaliate. "Captain, we've broken through!" Alia shouted, her voice tinged with relief. "We're clear to make a direct assault on the Phoenix." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she watched Drakkar's flagship grow larger on the holoscreen. They had broken free, but the battle was far from over. She turned to Matthews. "Get me a clean shot at their command center," Sarah ordered. Matthews worked quickly, adjusting the targeting system. "Captain, targeting lock is in place. Ready to fire." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Fire!" The Starhawk's guns roared to life, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts directly at the Phoenix. The Zarathian flagship shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering briefly before stabilizing. But Sarah knew they were wearing them down. This wasn't a fight of raw firepower, it was a test of will. And humanity's will was stronger than Drakkar could have anticipated. "Shields at 60%, Alia reported, her voice calm despite the mounting chaos. "They're retaliating." A series of energy blasts from the Phoenix slammed into the Starhawk, causing the ship to lurch. Alarms blared as the hull groaned under the strain. The crew worked in a synchronized frenzy, rerouting power to the shields and engines to keep the Starhawk in the fight. "We can't keep taking hits like this," Matthews said, his voice edged with frustration. "Keep them off us!" Sarah snapped, her eyes fixed on the Phoenix. They had one shot at this, and if they failed, humanity's future would be in Drakkar's hands. "Prepare for a final assault," Sarah said, her voice low and commanding. "We break them now or we don't break at all." The Starhawks surged forward once more, heading straight for the Phoenix. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she watched the ship draw closer. Drakkar's fleet was beginning to falter, but his flagship remained a formidable foe. "Full power to the forward weapons," Sarah ordered. "We're taking down that ship." Alia nodded and executed the command. The Starhawk's cannons blazed again, unleashing an even more powerful salvo at the Phoenix. This time, there was no evasion. Drakkar's flagship took the full brunt of the attack. The ship's shields buckled under the pressure, and a series of explosions rang out from within. For a moment, the Phoenix faltered, its engines sputtering. The crew aboard the Starhawk exchanged glances. This was their chance. "Finish it," Sarah said, her voice cold. Matthews fired again, and this time, the Phoenix's main reactor exploded in a violent burst of light, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Zarathian fleet faltered, their flagship destroyed. The tide of the battle had turned. The battle was far from over, but with Drakkar's flagship in ruins, the Zarathian forces scattered. Humanity had struck a powerful blow, a blow that would resonate throughout the galaxy. But Sarah knew that this was only the beginning. Drakkar's ambition had been defeated for now, but others would rise to take his place. "Status report, Commander," Sarah said, her voice steady as the battle subsided. "We're holding steady, Captain," Alia replied, though the exhaustion was evident in her voice. "The enemy is retreating. But there's more to this than just one battle." Sarah nodded. The fight for humanity's future was far from over, but today, they had proven their strength. The silence aboard the Starhawk was deafening. The roar of battle had faded into the background, replaced by the steady hum of the ship's systems. For a moment, it felt like the world had paused. Sarah Wilder stood at the command console, her fingers lightly gripping the edge, eyes fixed on the emptiness of space outside the viewport. The aftermath of the battle felt surreal, a triumph, yes, but also a reminder of the razor-thin line between victory and defeat. The Zarathian fleet had been shattered. Drakkar, the architect of humanity's potential downfall, lay in the wreckage of his flagship, the Phoenix. But the galaxy was vast, and Drakkar's death, while significant, was not the end of the war. There would be other threats, other power-hungry factions eager to take advantage of any weakness humanity might show. Sarah knew this was only one chapter in a much larger story. "Captain!" Alia Grayson's voice broke through the stillness, sharp and urgent. "The remaining Zarathian ships are pulling back, but the Krivak Dominion ships are staying in formation. They're not retreating." Sarah turned to face her commander, meeting her gaze. Alia's eyes were tired but resolute. The battle had taken its toll on the crew, but the resolve in their eyes hadn't wavered. "I'm aware," Sarah said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of command. "But we've won. Drakkar is dead. The Phoenix is gone. The Krivaks don't have the resources to continue this fight on their own. That's the thing," Alia said, turning back to the tactical display. "They've always been an opportunistic faction. They'll see this as an opening to push their agenda." Sarah's gaze moved to the holoscreen, where the remaining Krivak ships hovered like dark vultures. There were no signs of immediate aggression, but that didn't mean they were ready to stand down. The Krivak Dominion, known for their ruthlessness, had no love for the Zarathian collective or humanity. They would bide their time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Let's not give them that moment," Sarah replied. "Get us in range of their lead ship. It's time to finish this." The Starhawk moved with purpose, its engines roaring to life as it closed the gap between itself and the Krivak fleet. The tension in the air was palpable. The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, their focus laser-sharp. Sarah had made her decision. The Krivak Dominion had been a looming threat for far too long. If humanity was going to take its place among the stars, it couldn't afford to let these factions dictate the rules of the game. "Lieutenant Matthews," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the low murmur of activity. "Get me a clean shot at the lead Krivak ship. I want their engines disabled, no more, no less." Matthews turned to face her, his face grim. "Understood, Captain." The ship's weapons systems hummed, their energy building. The Krivak ship, a behemoth with a dark, jagged exterior, loomed ahead, its weapons pointed directly at them. The tension in the air thickened, every second stretching into eternity. "Ready to fire," Matthews announced. Sarah took a breath. "Fire!" The Starhawk's cannons roared, the deafening sound vibrating through the ship's hull. A direct hit struck the Krivak vessel's engines, sending a burst of light and smoke into space. The ship staggered, its power flickering before stabilizing. But it was no longer a threat. The Krivaks, stunned by the sheer force of the attack, hesitated. "Target their weapons array," Sarah ordered. "Let them know we're not backing down." Alia's hands flew over the controls as the Starhawk fired again, this time targeting the Krivak ship's weapons. The ship's shields were already weakening, and the precise strike knocked out their primary cannons. The Krivak fleet, seeing their flagship compromised, began to pull back. They had no choice. They were outmatched. But Sarah knew this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter. The galaxy wasn't going to hand humanity its place on a silver platter. There would be no easy victories. The battle would continue, in diplomatic halls and in the dark corners of space. "Captain," Matthews said, his voice a bit more relaxed now. "The Krivaks are retreating. They're heading to the outer rim." "Let them go," Sarah replied, her voice cold. "We've made our statement." The Starhawk turned, its course set back toward the Elysian hub. The battle was over for now, but the stakes had never been higher. Humanity had proven itself, both in the field and in the galaxy's political stage, but Sarah knew that Drakkar's death wouldn't stop the wheels of war from turning. There were too many factions hungry for power, too many old rivalries still simmering beneath the surface. "Captain," Alia said, her voice more contemplative now, "do you think this will change anything? The way the galaxy sees us?" Sarah considered the question for a moment. "I think the galaxy will remember this battle. It'll remind them that humanity is not to be underestimated. But will they respect us?" Alia pressed. Sarah's gaze turned outward, her eyes scanning the vast emptiness of space. She didn't have an easy answer. Respect wasn't something that could be handed over. It had to be earned through action, through sacrifice, through victories won against overwhelming odds. We've earned the right to stand among them, Sarah said quietly. Respect will come in time. But it won't come easily. Hours later, the Starhawk docked at the Elysian hub. The crew was weary, but their spirits were high. They had fought for their future, and they had won. Sarah's boots echoed on the metal floors as she walked through the corridors of the station, her thoughts still on the battle. She had won today, but there was more to be done. Drakker's death had not solved all of humanity's problems. If anything, it had only highlighted how fragile their position was in the galaxy. As she entered the command center of the Elysian hub, the galaxy's leaders were already assembling. Their faces were a mix of awe and curiosity. Humanity had shown them what they were capable of, but this meeting would be the real test. The political ramifications of the battle would be felt for years to come. Captain Wilder. The voice of the Council of Elders rang out, a deep, resonant sound. You've proven humanity's strength today. But strength alone will not be enough to secure your place among the stars. Sarah met their gaze, her expression resolute. Then it's a good thing we have more than just strength. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had made its mark. And as Sarah looked around the room, she knew that the future was wide open. There would be challenges ahead, but they were ready. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not just a force to be reckoned with, but a force to be respected. The battle was over. But humanity's war, for peace, for respect, for a future among the stars, was just beginning. Let them come, Sarah muttered under her breath, her voice filled with quiet determination. We'll be ready. And with that, the dawn of a new era for humanity began.